Dustin Amrine. I'm from the IBM WebSphere Software Development Organization. Specifically, I'm a technical evangelist and software engineer, focusing on some of our cloud computing technologies and cloud computing in the application middleware space in general. So let's jump right in, and just to give a little context around why we're talking about cloud computing in the application environment space is because we have problems, we have inefficiencies. Like with any other part of our IT operations, there are certain things that we could do better. So what are those problems in particular? Well, to start with, it takes too long to get application environments up and running. Right now, the average lead time it says here is anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. Now, in a particular organization, that may be much greater, it may be much smaller, but the bottom line is you don't talk to anyone that says, I get my application environments up and going just as fast as I want. There's always something that holds them back. And we're talking about things like setting up the hardware, installing the operating systems, installing the middleware, installing the applications, configuring those applications, everything that it takes to get from nothing to up and running. Another problem that we see pretty consistently is that the problem of configuration drift. So if we look at an application environment that's in test or in development, and we want to move that from development to test to staging and eventually on to production, each time we move that environment, there's a chance that the underlying configuration of that environment is slightly changed. And this can introduce significant behavior differences in the application runtime. And these kinds of bugs are really hard to track down because as developers, we're trained to find and deal with problems in code, not problems that are buried in one attribute of an XML file. So really hard to track down, really common occurrence. So what we want to do is be able to lock down that configuration, essentially codify our infrastructure, and be sure that as we're moving from development to test, staging, production, whatever that promotion chain may be in your organization, we want to be sure that we're getting the same environment each time. And then finally, as a developer, this really hits home to me because it takes so much time and resource to set up these application environments. We're really not incented to return the resources used by the application environments when we're done. So what I mean by that is, as a developer or a tester, I may set up an application environment for what I think is 1 to 2 weeks worth of work. I do my development, I do my testing, I'm done. When I'm done, I won't necessarily tear down my application environment and return the hardware resources, the compute resources that I was using back to the organization so someone else can use them. Typically what I'm going to do is hold on to those just in case. Just in case I need to come back a week later or 2 weeks later to make slight tweaks to the application or to do a little bit more testing. In reality, that's horribly inefficient, right? I could be putting that hardware resource to better use. And in fact, this kind of mentality has actually led to this problem of server sprawl in the data center, where every time we set up an application environment, we're buying new hardware, and that just becomes a management burden and a cost burden. So with those problems in mind, IBM WebSphere is releasing has released 2 different products to really combat these issues. The first is we're looking at virtual image packaging of our application middleware products. So starting with our WebSphere application server product, which is our J2EE application middleware container, and then extending that out, we're coming up with this idea of taking a virtual image, putting in an operating system, our middleware components, like the WebSphere application server, and customization activation engine function, putting all that into a virtual image, shipping that as one single file. On top of that, we're also providing this WebSphere Cloudburst appliance, which is a hardware device that takes these what we call the hypervisor edition virtual images and dispenses those and manages those onto a set of virtualized shared infrastructure in your organization. So the WebSphere Cloud Burst Appliance takes the images, allows you to build meaningful environments from those images, not just one image at a time, but actually multi-node environments, and then dispense those, deploy those on top of this shared infrastructure. And essentially it's creating a collection of virtual machines that represent your application environment, your applications, and your unique configuration for those applications. So if we take a deeper look at one of our Hypervisor Edition virtual images, and specifically this is our WebSphere Application Server product. So if any of you are familiar with the WebSphere Application Server, this is the same binaries that we would ship in the traditional sense, but we've packaged it up into a virtual image. These virtual images are ready to run on either VMware ESX hypervisors or our own IBM Power VM hypervisor platform. We're shipping an operating system in there, SUSE Linux in the case of ESX, the AIX